Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job, because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." What's a real-life example of this? I was working as a stock boy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first day, I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler, cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter, and yanked it out from under. The look on the store manager's face, and the other employee who was training me, was pure bewilderment. From that day, everyone did it my way. At the start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was getting worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day, I left him at the laptop doing his math while I made dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. When I walked back into the living room with his food, I found him asking Alexa all of his math questions. I wouldn't call that lazy, more like an intelligent use of the technology at hand. Learning to use technology is probably a much more valuable lesson than whatever math problems he was working on. I worked as a laborer at a nursery one summer. My daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day. I put together a back-of-the-napkin plan to build an irrigation system and spent the next few weeks building it with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all the work now. I basically automated myself out of the job and eventually had to find another one. A couple of years later, I got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people who will spend a disproportionate amount of effort to make things easier. My brother-in-law spent an entire summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake. In theory, he could have crawled under it and jacked it up, but that would have basically been a tunneling project. The deck is a 60 by 60 area of long 2 by 6 boards. Massive. After enough beers, I came up with the idea of just cutting out a 3 foot by 3 foot square in the sagging area, jacking it up, and then rescrewing down the boards. He paints the whole thing every spring with a roller anyway, so the square cut doesn't even show. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It was probably only a 20-minute experiment, but your arms get tired after a couple of minutes, and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't give an accurate reading. So instead of just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to keep it in the water without touching the bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you would ever see in a lab class, and our professor even walked over and said, "If it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid." I had a math teacher that actively encouraged his students to be as lazy as possible, defining lazy as actively searching for ways to do as minimal work as possible. His logic was that, the way math is now, it could always be simplified and still work the same. Someone just needs to be lazy enough to find that. My favorite math teacher used to say that the best solution is the one you find. The clerk was asked to bring 145 white papers into the office. He didn't want to count them manually, so he just printed 145 blank sheets and took them in. It took me about 3 months, but I automated a data pipeline to extract data, clean it up, and output it in Excel or PDF format for one of our clients. I walked over to chat with the lady who handles my client and gives me tasks, and she told me we make $40,000 every month from that automated job. Damn, I need to go start my own business. As a developer at least, it's quite common that everything you create at work belongs to the company. So make sure your script doesn't belong to them before you try to start a business with it. I had a manager in my 20s who detested the fact that I turned a 2-hour process into a 15-minute process. It exposed how much lazier he was compared to me, because when the higher-ups learned from others at my level that I created the program, they took me aside and told me he had taken credit for it. They asked how I felt about that. I told them that what decisions they make regarding the manager's character is their decision. Just put yourselves in my shoes and consider it from that angle. They did nothing. So I took the concept to a competitor who invested the money to make the program more robust and proprietary. My name was first on the patent and trademark documents, and I did well enough to semi-retire at 45. I credit Lee Iacocca for the inspiration. He went through a similar problem with higher-ups at Ford, and his answer was to take his brain to Chrysler, who would value it. Back in high school, a lot of kids used to walk through this park to get home or to school. Part of the path went into the woods because it was just quicker than taking the actual trail. At one point in the walk through the woods, you had to go up a small but tedious hill. Nothing major, but it took about 10 seconds of hard work to climb. You couldn't go around because one side was a small cliff down to the creek and the other side had dense trees. One summer, a bunch of us got together and decided to just dig through that hill to make it flat. It took about 14 of us 3 full days to get through it. It was a hard 3 days, but it was definitely worth it. It saved 10 seconds of hill climbing every morning and afternoon, 150 plus days of the year. And it wasn't just us. Hundreds of other kids took the same path every day. Sometimes you need to put in a lot of work so your future selves can enjoy the easy way out. I was invited to my friend's yearly apple picking. A full day of apples, kids, and filling a truck for cider. I'm lazy, so I suggested we make the process more efficient by using tarps on the ground. We managed in 2 hours what historically took all day. We didn't even get to the picnic lunch. Essentially, I ruined apple picking. Walkie-talkies. In every job I've ever had, these things make your day far less labor-intensive if used correctly. Good God, I wish we had these things. I spent 20 minutes of my coffee break at 3 a.m. trying to call the plant in an area with almost no service so they could let me into the building because I'd left my wallet inside. Didn't get my coffee either. I knew a guy who had a low-level data/reporting job. He had several daily and weekly responsibilities, including a bunch of reports that needed quite a bit of tweaking from raw data to finished product. But like I said, low level. We didn't find out until much later, but he had set up macros for each of his major tasks where he could. Once set up, he'd just run the macros to do his work, but then he'd smartly hold off on delivering the reports until just before the deadlines. He hit every assignment and was seen as reliable. He also complained about the workload, so people would leave him with that work. I doubt he did a full hour of actual work a day after he set up what he did. Eventually, he left the job for one with better pay, but damn did he work lazy. Also, he was smart not to reveal it until the end. Had he told them about it, he would have gotten a pat on the back and been given a whole other workload on top of maintaining those macros, etc. Dude milked the job, not the other way around. Years ago as a student, I got a job stocking shelves. Guys were carrying the heavy boxes, put them on the floor, and bend each time to pick up the items to put on the shelves. I was maybe a light 100 pounds woman and carrying the boxes was just killing me physically. So one day I had an idea. I put the box on an old desk chair and rolled it around. No more carrying and no more bending. Funny thing is that instead of doing the same thing, most of the guys called me lazy and kept carrying the heavy boxes, just to prove how strong they were. Now they have special rolling carts to do the job. My brother gave my oldest nephew $10 a week if he did all his chores without needing to be told or complaining. One day he gets home early from work and sees the neighbor kid tossing a bag in the trash. He asks him what he's doing and the kid says he gets $5 a week to take care of a few chores. My nephew outsourced his chores. I remember reading about a Texas airport that had a high number of complaints from people who had to wait too long for their luggage at baggage claim. The solution? They assigned a baggage claim further away for the same flights. People walked longer, but the complaints went way down since they didn't have to wait as long. I asked my husband to take out roughly a dumpster's worth of trash. He spent about an hour building a sled out of the trash and took it out in one trip. Laziest man I've ever met. Mail delivery. You know, it was a lazy fucker who came up with the idea to have localized mailboxes in each neighborhood instead of individual boxes on each home. One time I asked my boss, "Seriously, why do you always toss me the difficult tasks?" He replied, "Because I know you'll get it done quick, so you can get your ass back on Reddit." Leave a comment with a time when laziness helped you come up with a genius solution to make your work easier. I'll be waiting for you in the next video.